Okay then, everyone. Hello, and thank you for sharing your time with us at the Primenet and TrustNet webinar. I hope all of your families and you are surviving the lockdown. What I'm going to do now, I'll give you a quick introduction to what's going to be going on with the webinar. My name's Duncan Brown. I'm Primenet's Commercial Director. I'd like to start off by saying a big thank you to Guy and to Michael, who are joining us from our MSSP partner TrustNet. Now, the format of the webinar is going to be as follows. I will do a quick intro before handing over to Guy, who will be looking at TrustNet's SOC version 2.0 model before giving Michael control when he will look a little bit closer at MDR, which is Managed Detection and Response. And then at that point, we'll be handing back to Guy, who'll be taking a look at a case study, specifically how Agile can be used in order to turn security from being a cost for an organization into a key selling point. Before we do that, for those of you who don't know us, Primenet is striving to be one of the most innovative providers of services and infrastructure solutions globally. As an MSP, we currently manage and maintain thousands of servers and systems for hundreds of clients whose IT is built on Dell, EMC, HPE, NetApp, AWS, and Microsoft Cloud technologies that we manage and support from our ISO 27001 24/7 365 service desk, which is based in the UK. If you'd like to find out a little bit more about that, please message me, and I'm sure we can book in some time for a video call. In terms of how we operate, we have an ecosystem of global partners selling our services to customers, including top 10 VARs, managed service providers, and clients from defence, central government, utilities, healthcare, energy, ISPs, and aviation. We're supported by a skilled team of IT professionals who are always striving to go the extra mile to ensure the smooth running of your IT and your business. I've worked in IT for 20 years now, many of those selling managed security solutions. That said, it's important to avoid hubris when it comes to securing networks and data. The global community has always relied on Israeli innovation in IT and cybersecurity. I'm sure the name Checkpoint rings a bell to most of you. It makes sense to hear what the most capable Israeli MSSP has to say about detection and response to modern threats, to our data, reputation, and our livelihoods. So without further delay, I'd like to hand over control of the webinar to Guy. Please interact as much as you want to. We're handing over between presenters, so there will be a slight dip in between those times. So do feel free to raise your hand on the GUI. We will do our best to answer your questions so that you can get the response that you need. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the talk.
Thank you, Duncan. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us during these challenging times. In this webinar, we'll try to shed some light on how to improve and set up a strong and firm security operations. And basically, we'll try to transform vision and strategy into a more down-to-earth execution. We'll try to take those high-level terms, services you all hear and bring them into your organizations. Okay, so first let me introduce myself. My name is Guy Lieberman, and I'm the head of the cybersecurity division at TrustNet. I previously worked as a cybersecurity analyst and as a security engineer. In my spare time, I'm trying to compete and beat every certificate in the world, and in my spare time, I'm trying to play a bit of computer games. About TrustNet. So before we dive into our agenda, I want to explain about TrustNet and our work. TrustNet is a leader security and consulting firm in the cybersecurity world. One of our main services is helping organizations build and define their security operation. We're basing those implementation on our own TSOC, the leading managed security operations center in Israel. So as Duncan said, our agenda is divided into 3 sessions. The first one is SOC version 2.0, a module that we defined in order to help organization understand what we're doing in our managed service, but also understand how we can help organization which wants to implement these operations internally, how we can help them with performing those services. The second part, we'll take a glimpse into detection and response with a live demonstration. And I'm not sure if you just take this to the side. And the last part, we'll introduce an agile way for security operation and basically how security can be a business enabler. So what we refer to as SOC version 1.0 is usually security operation that is limited with the relations to business strategy. The SOC is an isolated island under the IT operation, and activities basically focused on monitoring and have limited proactive actions because it's not related to the business itself. You can see that the ability to impact and perform proactive actions is very limited on those SOC centers. Those IT-oriented security operations centers are really struggling when facing complex threat landscape we see today. So to handle these challenges, we defined the SOC version 2 module. And the core difference of the SOC version 2 can best be described graphically. A SOC version 2 is an integral part of business operations. The activity is focused on organizational risks. It's important to understand that visibility and automation can provide a more efficient and focused delivery of security. But above all, the SOC version 2 should and will be a business enabler. So as I said, TrustNet defined the SOC version 2.0 kernel module to help you understand what are the core services that your security operation must have. So the first part of our puzzle is visibility. Visibility is the bedrock of security operations. It consists of logs, packets, asset information, vulnerabilities. A high level of visibility with frameworks like MITRE ATT&CK can provide useful insights for every security operation. Basically, visibility is the base for every service that we're going to talk about next. So if you don't have visibility or you need help with making sure your organization has the proper visibility, we can help you with gaining this level of visibility. The second part is cyber threat intelligence, or in short, CTI. I'm guessing that some of you might have heard this term before. CTI is becoming one of the most effective ways to fight against targeted attacks. As the saying goes, the more you know, the more you see. CTI can help us get a heads up before an attack, or if attack already happened, we can identify the data that was leaked. And nowadays, with all the privacy regulation, this is a must for any organization who handle data. Our next generation SOC should be proactive. It's important to understand that adversaries find unique ways to penetrate and work around our environment. We have found that about 60% of the cases being unveiled using the normal use cases, monitoring rules, and so on, but 40% of those use cases are still in the shade, and without proper proactive activity being performed by trained analysts, you're probably missing 40% of the adversary's activities in your environment. Another type of proactive activity is threat hunting. The robust skill set that you need to perform threat hunting and the deep and thorough knowledge and expertise you need are major. And this is why, in order to hunt for the tactics, techniques, and procedures, a next generation SOC must be trained to perform those actions. SecOps is all about making your security operation living and breathing. So the platform must change in dynamically way. You should have advanced development and automation capabilities. Security operation should be managed within this dedicated platform that will enable your SOC team to operate in the most control, manage, and measured way. Today, I know that most of the SOCs that we're helping with in the process of forging this SecOps with the technology or manually with some scripts and capabilities that they develop internally, but this is a must. Without a security operation, today's SOC can't respond and mitigate threats in the proper ways that we need. So we talked about the blue team activity and the parts that relates to blue team. Let's talk about red team. A good and stable security operation should be tested on a regular basis. You should test your security operation to ensure that the posture is impenetrable by the ever-changing threat landscape. It is under the red team activity to uncover hidden parts of attack surface. So if you're protecting against 90% of the attack surface that you are familiar with, but you have never done a red team drill, there might be an entire attack surface that you're missing and you're just unaware of. You don't have the visibility there, and you don't know when you're attacked from this domain. UEBA, user and entity behavior anomaly, are technologies that basically every organization should have. But if you are an organization that put insider threat risk a top priority, this is a must technology. Now, I know that there are some that argue that UEBA technologies are just in the baby steps of fighting anomalies, but it's important to understand that there are use cases that this is the only tool that can help us detect and identify those threats. One might say it's like finding a needle in the haystack without using a UEBA technology. So the last part of our SOC version 2.0 is SOC management. SOC management consists of strategy, measure, and optimization. Security operation must be dynamic and responsive to change with the attacker and with the threat landscape. It should be ready to evolve at any point. You might start with top risks or top priorities at point A. At point B or C, you will see different risks, different threats, or even maybe new technologies that you need to now implement and manage within your SOC. The skill set that you need in order to manage the SOC will change. This is crucial for a SOC operation to be managed correctly with the proper key procedure, KPIs, KRIs, and so on. So while building our SOC kernel module, we try to design a framework that will help organizations with completing their unique puzzle. Those core services, some of those you might already have, some you will need help with implementing, or some you would like to take as a managed service. Whatever you prefer, this is the setup that we recommend for every next generation SOC that wants to compete and wants to beat those advanced persistent threats and the threat landscape that we see today. Before I'm going to pass the stick to Michael, Duncan, let me know if anyone has a question right now for this part.
Hi, Guy. Thank you very much for that. That was incredibly useful. In terms of questions, I'll see if Ron has any from the audience. Just whilst we're waiting for that, let's imagine that I'm a small to medium-sized business. I've got one security guy internally. I've just seen this. I know that there are probably some gaps allowing people to get at my IPR. Where do I start? Can you describe what the key milestones would be in terms of implementing part or all of your solution?
Yeah, of course. So TrustNet works with organization basically of any size. We have organization with large staff, tens of security engineers and analysts, internal analysts, and so on. And we're also working with small organization. One of my customers has only a CISO, for example. And for those organizations, it's important to understand what are the threats risks, specific threats, specific risks, and what is the level of protection each part requires. So for example, if a customer has only one person, I'm not sure UEBA, for example, will be a technology that will be on the first phase that we're going to approach to. What's important is to define the scope that we want to start with, and then identify which services we can implement or develop internally, and which one can be migrated into a managed service. So for the specific organization that you mentioned, my recommendation will be to consider which one of those services can be migrated or hand over to a managed service. So I can tell you that a lot of TSOC customers are small organizations with huge regulation needs, and those organizations are saying, I need a visibility, and I need a red team, and I need the tailored threat intelligence, but I can't afford developing those techniques and tools internally, and they're just saying, this puzzle in your environment in 1 month. And this is what we're doing. We're defining together how we can tailor this puzzle and this service using our managed service. I hope this answers your question.
Thank you very much. It seems that there is no one size that fits all with this. So first you identify the threats, then you define the rational scope. Then once you've done that, you look at the individual concerns of the organization before building the plan and getting it synced in with your organizational strategy.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly. And the most, I think that the most important part here is that when you're planning your environment and your setup, it's important to remember that iterating and pivoting every time, those are terms that comes from the startup world. Every time you seems to see that your security operation are struggling with the front landscape, with the regulation requirements and so on, you must stop, look in your security operation, understand what you need to define and what you need to improve, and go on. So I think that this point relates directly to our last session, and we'll present how you iterate and improving your security operation every time.
Thank you very much for that, Guy. Ron, have there been any questions from the audience, or shall we move on to Michael?
Hello.
Hello,
I
Ron.
think we do have a question, but I was just asked to ask it later on privately to Guy from one of the participants, but he prefers not to do it right now. Yep.
Perfect.
Okay, so later on. Okay.
Over to Michael.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael, and thank you for joining us today at Managed Detection and Response. We are going to talk about what is MDR. MDR stands for Managed Detection and Response. Why do you need one? What advantages the proper technology will give us, and who should use an MDR? My name is Michael Weinstein. I'm 34 years old. I've been working with Microsoft infrastructure for the past 10 years, 6 years in InfoSec. For the last 3 years, I'm managing TrustNet MDR service. I enjoy exploring technology, system, and doing incident response. In my work, I handle attacks and breaches against our customers. In my free time, I love to travel and spend time with the family. Nowadays, cyber attack has become very complex and sophisticated. It is almost impossible to detect and respond to an active, advanced, persistent threat without the proper technology and expertise. One might say that it is like finding Wally. Can't find him? That's okay, me neither. Let's take a look at example scenario. Here we can see the Kirchin phase with the possible implementation by threat actors. It's important to note, threat actor has multiple ways and techniques to get to the same goal. I chose a specific sample set. Let's start from left to right. So the delivery phase. The malicious code or software must reach our environment somehow. It can be used as from a RAG USB storage device containing a piece of file, or it can be a more advanced USB device that simulates keystrokes. This is a very good technique by attackers because it will bypass most device control policies as the USB device imposes as a keyboard. Next one is a malicious document. Attacker loves to send dirty doc or PDF file with a specific and special payload to execute on victim machine. It can be like a malicious file downloaded from a website. A user surfing to a website, thought he was downloading a game, but no, he downloaded some malware. The exploitation phase usually comes right after. It can be a specific custom shellcode, or it can be something you downloaded with Microsoft signed binaries like Certutil and Bitsadmin. There are multiple ways to exploit the system. The installation phase will usually happen using Windows API in the context of the user who launched the attack, a document or the USB device mentioned before. Next phase usually will be build a command and control channel for the attacker. The attacker will need the possibility to control the device, to provide second stage of payloads, and making sure data can go in and can go out. Action on objective include a lot of varieties. In our recent engagement, we mostly encounter data encryption and data exfiltration. In one of the engagement, we even saw that the data encryption that took place on 300 servers was a decoy for a larger data theft operation. What it's like to do IR without MDR. Once upon a time, a customer called TSOC Redline seeking for help. To the left, you can see customer setup. As you can see, we are missing a ton of stuff, but hey, we got panic. To the right, we can see the result of the APT conducted on the customer infrastructure. You can see that 20% of the data center was encrypted with an unknown ransomware. The ransom demand was $1 million, and the attack is still active. Proper MDR service will help us to mitigate the attack in early stages, unlike the scenario mentioned here. Now, let me show you how can we investigate and respond with proper technology and skills. I've prepared a lab, a simulation, that shares same tactics, techniques, and procedures from real life. So let's dive in. When I start an investigation, first thing I must understand how this threat arrived to my infrastructure, who brought it in and why. Here we can see an execution change that started by Outlook. Everybody knows the email client, millions of users. The email channel is a very easy way for an attacker to get his payload inside. Here we can see that Acrobat Reader was triggered from Outlook. It means that the user clicked on the document he received via email, and we get a detection about Adobe Reader launching on its own parent chain. It means that this Acrobat Reader, except for opening the document, he did something else. This can be our exploitation phase. At this point, I would usually stop and ask myself two questions. Who else in my environment got this email? I want to find out how big is my exposure. So I will take this file name, provide it to my SOC, and ask them, go hunt this on the mail relay. Bring the recipients of this email, the senders of the email, of these emails, and we want to understand what else we received from this suspicious sender. Second, I would stop and ask the user that is got compromised. Who is he? He is a user with 0 privileges, or maybe he's an admin, or maybe in the middle of both. Continuing the investigation, we will continue with the flow on the screen. We can see PowerShell performing network, disk, and DNS operation. This is most likely will be our installation phase. Attacker love to use something called reflective DLL injection. This term comes to describe when you take a piece of code, you load it into memory and execute in memory without touching disk. This is a very good technique from attacker point of view for two main reasons. One, you will bypass most antiviruses because you don't touch disk. Secondly, it won't leave much traces for the IR team. As mentioned, no traces on disk. Traces exist only in memory. When we see this process starting to do network and DNS and communication, we can safely assume that this PowerShell got compromised and a foreign code was injected into. From here, it can go to the command and control channel we mentioned about. It can be credential dumping. It can be more second stage of payloads. Here, a bit below, we can see certutil, Windows binary certutil, performing a download from a remote location. When we will open this command and we will see all the arguments, we will see that certutil using an argument called URL cache. This argument goes somewhere and brings some HTTP data. In this specific case, I can see that it went to a remote location and downloaded something I'm not familiar with. This is highly suspicious. In this point, we can understand that the attacker has full control on this device and can do pretty much what he wants. So now we need to respond. At first, I would like to change the network containment status for this device. I would like to isolate it from all networks except my EDR management platform. Because we're not done, we need to collect some more things from this device. After the device was isolated and we know it's not an active threat anymore, we can open a remote shell to the device. 3 seconds. Okay, great. Now, remember we mentioned earlier that this device got injected code into memory and we don't have any traces on the disk. So this is the point. I will take a memory dump of the process to preserve the evidence. If this device gets crashed or rebooted, all the information and evidence in memory will disappear. So this is crucial for me. I want to take a memory dump and analyze it afterwards in my lab. Secondly, I will choose to run a custom PowerShell script to collect some evidence. This evidence cannot be collected by EDR solution because of the large quota you will need to collect everything all the time. So this is very important to collect right after the incident. For the last part, I would like to take a complete memory dump of the device. Our EDR triggered only on 2 or 3 processes, but maybe there's more. Maybe there's something our EDR is missing. When having a complete memory dump, I can investigate it and find more things the EDR might miss. It's important to add, today we show this on the CrowdStrike EDR platform. It can be any other platform, it really doesn't matter, as long as it provides us with the visibility we need and the response actions we can perform. This is the end of my demonstration. Thank you so much for joining. Duncan, before I go back to Guy, anyone has any question?
Yes, we do have some questions, Michael. First is from the audience. The question is, if next generation EDR, so that's the endpoint detection and response solution, collect all data, why do I still need to buy an advanced skills?
Very good question, Duncan. Thank you. Well, basically, identify and categorize is the most important part when dealing with big amounts of data. Trained and skilled analysts will be able to mark what's important and need to be addressed now. Saying I have 10 terabytes of EDR data is good, but if I know which part matters, it's better.
Thank you very much. Okay, and my question is, how can I check my security posture against an APT or an advanced persistent threat?
Okay, so first, you've got to make sure the basics are good and strong. I'm talking about credential hygiene, privilege management, system hardening, and risk management portfolio. After this stage is complete and you're satisfied with the result, you can go forward and simulate an APT attack. This usually performs as internal test by red teams you hire and not somebody else. Just to make sure to mention, you want real-life tactic, techniques, and procedures to match the real threat actors.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So use an external team if you are testing your own security. since you shouldn't have the same people setting up the security and then providing the audit on it. Thank you. That makes sense.
Thank you. Now back to Guy.
Yeah, so hope you enjoyed and have fun with Michael. I think he showed you all that his job is probably way more interesting than mine. We wanted to finish our webinar with a customer success story, how security can be your business partner and not your opponent. So I'll just start. Yeah. So in January 2019, we got an urgent call from a large software company. The deal of a lifetime was at their doorstep. One of the deal breakers was security, a managed security operation. And basically, the acquiring company said, if you're not managing your security, we don't trust you and we don't want to do business with you. So they set up an audit that covered almost every aspect of security operations. And the audit, and at this part, we weren't involved. This was done offline with the both organizations. So that audit started, and as you can see, the starting point wasn't that bright. The company failed at every aspect, and the acquisition was actually at risk. After a long conversation and several meetings we held with the organization, we started working. And when you start to work at this specific point, with this starting point, it seems really hard on how you're going to go all the way. How can you achieve what is required in the period of time that was defined? So to do it, the first thing we did is introducing the Agile way to the organization. Now, Agile is a term of development that is focused on dynamic and adapting management processes. It provides delivery, early delivery, support, and most of all, willing to change in order to meet business objectives. Now, embracing Agile into security operation can resolve a lot of conflicts with internal departments. I know that along the way, in many organizations, security is being considered as something that delays business, something that might be an obstacle in the way to achieve the targets of the organization. And this is what we want to avoid. We want to make security, and especially security operation, a business enabler. So we focused on implementing ISO 27001 framework, but we used it and adjusted it in order to support a security strategy. It's important when you start to find the framework that is most suitable to the organization that you're going to work with. And the missing part of most security firms and most organizations is adjusting it based on the strategy of the organization. And I'm not talking only about the security strategy. I'm talking about an organization that has performed risk management and knows what are the risks and obstacles to his business plan. And security should be there to support and help the organization implement the security program. So embracing Agile security can really resolve our conflicts. And we wanted, the main obstacle, I think, in this specific process was we didn't have time. We needed to operate in a limited time frames, and we needed to harness every department basically in this organization to help us achieving the way. And as you know, harnessing departments and making sure everyone plays along with security is not a very easy task to do. So starting the engines, after defining the end goal, this was the based on the timeframes we had, where we need to be in specific period. It was, I think, almost 4 months. We had to take them all the way from A to Z when it comes to security. We started working in cycles, in Agile cycles. So the first part of each cycle was scope definition based on the current status and needs. So if you recall, we said that security operation needs to be living and breathing. And since the environment is ever changing, and the threat landscape and the things that you find out on your environment, they always change. Once you finish the first cycle, you discover that you have a lot of other obstacles that you need to focus on. And this is why every cycle we start with definition of scope. Next part is identifying and analyzing the critical parts of the scope that we're currently examining. We then operate to achieve visibility. As if you recall, we said in the security operations session that visibility is the bedrock for everything. This is the basics. And this is why once we get the scope, we analyze the gaps. The first thing is understand how we can get visibility from security perspective. What are the tools that we can examine and achieve visibility into our current status, so we can measure. If we can't measure our current status for every one of the scopes and domains that we defined, we won't know we're finishing the cycle. We won't know that we had made any progress in this domain. So after achieving visibility, we implemented and refined the security for every examined scope and every examined domain. Some were actions, active actions, changing policies, putting restrictive tools or monitoring tools, making actual changes to the security. And once we finish with setting up the security for each one of the domains, we onboarded it into our security operations platform. Now, in this case, this organization was a customer of our TSOC service, which means that for every action we performed, if we implemented, for example, a network access control solution to gain visibility, this implementation was onboarded to our TSOC center to monitor, to respond. If we see, for example, a rogue device being connected to the network, we need to operate, we need to respond, we need to isolate the system, and so on. This procedure of finishing a domain after definition, gap analysis, improving security, and onboarding to the security operation helped us gain the quick wins that we needed on each one of the domains. And at the end of the 10th cycle, a second audit was performed. It was literally money time. Now, if we failed this checklist, if we failed this audit, acquisition would have blown off the steps. And at this point, we actually succeeded on each one of the controls. And it's important to add that at this part of the audit, the acquiring organization sent a team of red teamers to attack the monitored organization for 2 weeks. And we were under attack of one of the most talented hackers and red teams that there is out there. And for 2 weeks, we have monitored and responded for every one of the attacks that they have simulated. They served as an advanced persistent threat, trying to target the crown jewels of the organization. And we helped the organization identify and monitor every one of the steps. And I can't tell you the name of the organization, but I can just say that those were one of the largest acquisitions that we saw, at least in Europe, for the last couple of years. So let's summarize success from our perspective. Security operation should not be the business enemy. It should support business objectives. It should support the strategy. It should serve as the defender of the business. I know that a lot of organizations, and my biggest problem with facing or dealing with organizations that are new to security operation is that they see security as something that will bring more work, that will bring more trouble, that will confuse the end users. And if you look on security this way, you will never be able to implement security operations properly. And we need to break those barriers. And this is the first step for every plan of security operation, is bringing down the barriers of the different departments, making sure everyone plays along, and we have everyone as team members to adjust, implement, and define the security to support the strategy of the business. So thank you very much for your time. It was really a pleasure. And if you currently have any question regarding this session or any other session, we're currently available. And also, as Duncan said, if you have any specific questions that you prefer sharing in private, then we're always available, and you can get our details anytime.
Thank you very much for that, Guy. That was fantastic. There's been one more question from the audience. The question is, in the use case that you described, it presents an organization with pretty much zero security. What's the difference, and how do you help organizations with existing security operations?
Very well. It's a large question. So I'll break it into 3 types of organization, and it's very similar to the concept we discussed previously. For organizations with non-security, Agile way can help with facing new and unknown challenges. For the example that we saw an organization that doesn't have any security, and everything was new to him. This is why doing the implementation in phases, in cycles, help this organization accept and adjust to the new security reality. For organization with some security, for example, emergent security program, or security that is adequate or just basic, the main need that they have with security is to understand that the current security program is on the right track, on the right way, that they have set the proper targets and goals. And for those organizations, what we usually do is we help them with auditing and with consulting along the way. So if you're an organization that currently have a small security team, and you know your regulations, but you are not sure how to be sure that your current setup will comply with those regulations. If you're not sure that your current setup can face security threats, and the best example I can give is, for example, for Microsoft Office 365. We see a lot of time that customer has Office 365 security features. If it's the full suite or just a partial suite, it doesn't matter. They have the features, but they never implemented those because they are unfamiliar with those features. They are unfamiliar with the capabilities, and they don't have the methodology to implement the security into Office 365 or, for example, any other tool that they have. So for those medium organization, what I'll advise them is to approach us to help you with understanding how you can perform your internal Agile cycle internally. And the last one, and I said it, this will be a long answer. The last one, our organization, a mature organization with existing security operation. What I have found is that organization that have an internal SOC team, for example, or they are working with a managed SOC for a long time, they usually slips in their shifts, let's say it like this. They are missing the new skills, the new capabilities, the new services. I saw an organization that have CrowdStrike implemented or Carbon Black implemented, but they never thought on utilizing the tool the way that we use it. So for those organizations, for example, we can help with performing training. We can help by giving them the service of the managed detection and response. So those organizations, the Agile way for security for mature organization is just to be sure that you're doing this iterating and pivoting in a managed way. You need to measure yourself all the time. You need to make sure that you have all the services, that you're performing all the actions. And I always recommend organization, use an external auditor to make sure that you're currently utilizing the tools, skills, and manpower you have. Because sometimes organization runs and buys more technology and go and implement the new projects and so on, but they're missing what they already have. Hope this that answers your question.
It was a big question. It was a big answer, but it made sense as far as I was concerned. So thank you to Guy and Martin for their contributions today. Ron and I will be in touch with you all to provide a link for the edited webinar in the very near future. If you can think of someone that you know who would benefit from watching it, or if you'd like to have a session set up to look at your current posture, your needs, or to set up some auditing, please just let Ron or myself know so that we can grab some details from you. Apart from that, thank you very much for attending, and please stay safe.
Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you very much,
everybody.
everyone.
And brilliant. Thank you to all the presenters. Well done. Thank you. Stay safe.